All right, we are recording, Don. So what are we going to be talking about tonight?
Okay, first I want to talk, anybody can stump me tonight, or maybe the next week. We're going to give them a couple of chats free. So I want participation. If we're not getting participation, then I think I'm sitting here and wasting my time. So I'm spending my time to educate you and to make you better beekeepers. So that's what I'm looking for. You to ask questions, get involved in this here. And then one thing a lot of students don't realize, I have students 10, 15 years ago. If you are a student and you want to come back, I'm not going to hit you up for another fee. Take advantages of the things that we do here. February, be sure if you want to take a queen rearing class, if you paid the $500, sign up and let us know when you're coming, because we're not going to do probably either 2 or 4 new people at each queen session. And it'll be either a 1 day or a 2 day. You can come 2 days. And it'll be at my Southern Bee Yard. If you have a camper, you're welcome to camp down there and save you some money. And also, we are doing building this month. So if you are a student and you want to learn to build my technique on building a box, I know everybody says they know how to build a box. All I'm trying to show you is more efficient way to do something. So you can take it for what it's worth. Now, February, we're doing our queen grafting classes and setting hives up. We are going to be doing major splitting in March, all the way through March. So Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are good days. You come, expect to work. You don't just sit there and just read a book. You're going to actually manipulate hives. We got plenty of stuff to do. If you're going to get into selling bees, you want to learn how to build packages, then you can work in the shop, build packages for a few hours, and when you get tired of that, we'll put you on something else. There's no excuse whether it's too cold, too hot, too rainy, because we got work in 2 buildings down here you can do, and outside, there's stuff to do. And if you're going to be a commercial beekeeper, you can't say, well, it's raining outside and the weather's just not right. You got to do what you need to do every single day. So get used to working in inclement weather. It might be too cold. It might be drizzling out there. But if you're getting orders, once you start to fall behind, you're going to really fall behind once the orders start coming in. And then I've got a product here, and all the students and stuff, you start doing videos and putting them up on YouTube, get your name out there, you're going to end up getting stuff like this. This is a new product that's come out. It's got antibiotics in there and other stuff. Well, not antibiotics. It's a probiotics is what it is. And I think this is going to be similar to like a honeybee healthy or Bee Pro or something like that, a liquid additive. I'm going to do a study on this where I'm going to set up 100 hives with this treatment and without. The literature they set with this here and the advertising on it shows hives that are boiling over that's doing 10 times better than a hive that's not fed this stuff. But a lot of this stuff, basically you can build it yourself by essential oils. Not everybody's going to get into the essential oils. It's another way to treat your bees healthy. And then I'm going to do like 2 videos on this here when we set the yard up with this, and then we'll take some videos of how the production is doing as far as building up. If you haven't ordered your bees, start ordering your bees. Try to get some from our local keepers that I have. In fact, I've sent, I guess in the last 2 weeks, I sent 4 or 5. In fact, Dennis should have got one today or yesterday from a guy from, maybe it was Arkansas. I don't know if he had gotten one or not. But when I get calls here, I try to send them out to my students. Did you get any notice or anything yet, Dennis?
I had a guy checking from me from Iowa. Haven't heard anything from Arkansas.
That might be another one I sent that way. Let's see, wherever you're at, whoever's calling me or wanting bees, I try to get to whoever's closest. And it's just like Greg. I send Greg a lot because he's got his route up there. The thing to think about is buy enough packages, you can basically get all your bees for nothing.
Mhm.
And I see prices right now are really marking up. And I'm not mentioning no names, but there's several keepers that's not well, they might have been past students years ago, and they're selling what they consider early bees. Get your order in, get your early bees. And they're giving a date of late April. That's not early. I mean, if you live up north and you want your bees early, we start putting our students in March. Now, I can probably do a few at the end of March. I still have a few openings, but my son is running all his, and I think he's pretty well booked until at least the first or second week in April. I know probably he's taking care of Greg, and he's got 2 or 3 of my students out of Texas. He's taking care of them. So we had David was over here today, and Kenneth was over here, and we was doing wax, making foundation today. And there's a lot of things when they come and do stuff like that, we talk about and discuss. So if you're not, it's like Nancy up here. She's got a good logo behind her. Get you something to advertise. Don't just sit there and listen. Get on here, participate. Tell us where you're from and what you got to sell and when you're going to have it. The business will come. Now, as far as in April and May, if you want to shake packages, Stephen's not going to let you go into his yards. I mean, I respect his thought on that, but my yard is set up for teaching. So I try to teach at my yard at the house here, and it's on a smaller scale. But when you go into what I consider a commercial yard, there's a different feeling it's going to come upon you. When you look around and you see all these hives and you hear the air, it's roaring. You want to learn how to shake packages? Eric Sandshafer and his son is coming down here. They want to shake their own packages. I will guide you on the first 4 or 5. I'll throw the scale there and you can look at it, you can feel it, pick it up, look at it, see how you feel. And then you're going to shake packages and we'll check you. That's how you're going to learn to get this commercial stuff done. Now, anybody got any kind of questions, any of this stuff?
I think Greg has something to add. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, hey Don, thanks for sending folks our way. We're taking orders for packages. It also set up a route in Ohio for nukes, where we're delivering nukes late May. So the package are late April from Georgia on up, and I think most folks have heard about that. But the nukes we're delivering across Ohio to late May. You can go to naturesimagefarm.com if you want more information on that. You mentioned Ken was down there visiting with you, and he actually posted a pretty cool video on Fat Bee-Man Group. We sent some of those plugs that we also keep you supplied in for buckets, Don. And he made a nice observation, pretty cool. And, this time of year, or towards the end of the year, when you're into your hives, when you pull your heaters off, you use those same plugs that we have, close off that hive lid, and it's watertight, seals it off. But he's also using it as like an observation, like a window, where he can pop right down and just look through that clear plug, and he can see the bees moving around, that kind of thing. So I never really thought to use it like that. So I thought that was pretty neat. But I wanted to do something, Don, where I'm trying to make up my mind on many mating nukes, on what size that I'm going to go. I know I talked to Steve, and he likes the idea of some of the double mini mating nukes. I know you have some of the single mating nukes, but I think the difference comes down to is how you're going to go about feeding the mini mating nukes. I have ideas on how to do that using those plugs and smaller tight feeders. But my question is, if you use a bucket feeder, or even like how you used to use the old Gatorade or Powerade bottles, when you something like a mini mating nuke, do they get enough flow from something like that, or do I need to kind of look like an infrater like you guys do down there in Crawfordville?
Well, you know, Jerry has been in business doing this here a long time. There's things that I learned from Jerry. Jerry learns from me. I personally tried the inside feeders when, you know, years ago, I went to the outside feeder because, you know, you almost have to tear the hive apart. If you got a feeder in there, for some reason starts to leak, you have a wet situation in there. And then it's time too. You know, how much time do you have to build these things? They have to be built, they have to dry, then you have to wax them. You got to have wax to put in them. And if you don't have your own beeswax and you're starting to buy beeswax to coat these things, see, you can build them out of tempered masonite, or Stephen's got a masonite. It's not tempered, but it's brown. It's something like a pegboard without the holes in. It's like maybe $6 a sheet, and I think he gets 30 some feeders out of a sheet. So you break that down, $5, you got, you know, 25, 30 cents in a feeder. If you bought some type of inside feeder, I mean, you got a lot more money tied up in it. You have to do what you like. Personally, I like Gatorade bottles on a mini nuke. I like them for the reason is you're setting up several hundred. You can look down a row of, say, 50 or 100 to a row. You can spot the empty ones at a distance. You go over there and replace them. They're cheap. You don't have nothing in them other than time and drilling them. You're getting to start making these boxes like, you know, some people don't make their own frames. I was down there a week and a half ago, and I was helping Stephen cut out right off the sawmill. We sawed the wood, made frames. Of course, he only made the top bar, and he made the bottom bar, and he buys the side bars. And if you're buying your stuff like that, like on end bars or frames, tell them you don't want them drilled. You're going to save a penny or a penny and a half a frame. I mean, it sounds piddly, but you know, we ran 1,800 off out of just wood off the sawmill. Next day, made them. So you don't need to dry these things. You're not building cabinets. I built bee boxes, hive boxes, supers, right off the sawmill. What I do is I get my measurement and I take my hive tool and I use that as a shim between my stock that I bump up against. And then I leave that much distance. And you get that much shrinkage, they're perfect. If you get over shrinkage, you can buy an electric, they call it air files. I got one that works on air. You get a rotary file and you can get on that frame rest and barely touch it. You could take off a few thousands. You know, like let's say they're not cabinet work, but you have to do something that saves you money in volume. And that's what we're trying to teach here.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Don.
Okay.
Okay, who else has a question for Don? Who wants to try to stump him?
Yeah, you got to have a kind of question.
Come on, stump the old man. Nobody? I'm gonna start calling on people soon. There we go.
I know John's got a. I can tell John's got a question.
Let's get Dennis first. Go ahead, Dennis.
Right.
Don, what's the coolest that you would start feeding syrup?
Well, actually, we had ice on my windows in South Georgia, and we're planning to throw our first grafts on first week in February. So we got 20 days to do that. Stephen has already got 100 of the hives up off the ground that was on pallets, and we're going to put feed on those, but it's the corn syrup, it's thick. The feed will go on next week because we want them to start brooding up. So where you're at, I don't know how much difference in the weather is, but I would go no more than a half a bucket if you're using the corn syrup right now.
Right now I'm in the 30s, but it seems to be a trend picking up and hitting the 40s. I'm getting antsy.
Well, everybody is.
I'm just thinking, well, if I can, they're not going to fly off.
No.
If I can start getting them built up and strong, I don't know. That's why I was kind of curious. I don't want to push it too soon, but
I think we're going to have a warm winter, but see, right now, if you're going to make splits, let's say in February, you got queen cells, ripe ones could go in. Instead of making that one frame split, I would do a one frame, and then I would shake 2 frames or 2.5 frames of extra bees in there. Put twice the amount of bees in there until at least after Easter. Then you can get by with a smaller amount because you won't have that fluctuation in temperature.
yeah, we won't be ready to split, but I'd like to get them strong enough if I could split quite a bit. I was just thinking about starting a little early. If it keeps going like it is, they're starting to lighten up. I've got dry sugar on them, but
Well, right now, from what I'm seeing dandelions almost every day blooming. And henbit, if you all know what henbit is, I got henbit outside my house here now blooming. It's not big blooms, they're small. The bloom is just starting to open up. You see the purple flower in it. That's basically 4 or 5 weeks early. And I'm starting to notice a little red cast in the trees where the red maples are starting to bud a little bit. But weather, you cannot predict it. You know, we've had weather where the red maples are almost ready to full bloom, and then we get a freeze and knocks down a lot of that nectar there.
I've still got snow and ice, but I'm getting antsy. And if it keeps going up in the 40s, just playing around with it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, where'd he go? Billy, did you still have a question?
Don't be bashful.
Well, I was going to ask one about shaking bees. I'm mostly running 5-frame hives. What is a minimum amount of bees that you need to say? I'm going to build a bunch of queens during spring break. Okay, so how far can I shake them hives down to build up these nukes, these mini nukes?
Are you talking about shaking on a 5-frame box?
Yeah, shaking out of a
I
5.
wouldn't shake no more than 1 frame until Easter. Then after that, you probably could shake a little bit more. I've shook 2 and 3 frames out of a 5-frame box, and I don't close the mating boxes up because they're in the same yard. And I'm looking at about a 60–70% flyback. And you understand what a flyback is, don't you?
The queen's coming back. Oh no, the
No.
fly back on the workers. Yeah,
Yeah, the workers, you're going to get a percentage of going back.
right.
Now, if you're not planning on that, when we set up some yards down there, we'll shake them out of the same yard and we'll use a screen with a thumbtack in it over the entrance, and we'll leave them 24 hours. And if we're doing, you know, like 300 in one day at 1 yard, we might leave them a day and a half or 2 days. But if you're going to do that method, make sure that the frame you put in has open honey on it and enough honey to last the amount of bees in there for, you know, a few days.
Yeah, that's normally the way I do it, is close them up for a day or two and then open them up. But okay, so that sounds good. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, over to Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
My question is going back to the Manymatic nukes. You was talking about feeding them with a pyrade. I've seen some of your videos where you just put honey frames on it. Is that not the way you're feeding them small ones?
If you got, now see, a lot of times people like right now are starting out going into the season to make many nukes. They don't have the resources. Now, if you have some 8-frame hives, full strength, or 10-frame hives, you can take a super, put a divider on it, put all your mini frames in it, set it over the top. If you're running doubles, you can separate the doubles and put all the mini frames in the super between the 2 deeps. That way your queen comes up in there and lays in there. And if you're running 10-frame stuff, you got 20 mini frames in there. That way you can set 20 mini nukes up and you got the brood already there, drop a ripe cell in there, and you're ready to roll.
Okay. See, I've done that last year and actually done pretty good with it. But I know I heard you talking about putting them Gatorade bottles on there and all. And I just last year just used honey frames and had pretty good luck with that, just feeding them that way.
Yeah. Well, you got to take, each person is starting at a different level. It's like I've run doubles many, many years ago. I went to the singles for one reason, because when the bees go out to mate, or the queen goes out and mates, she brings back so many bees. If you're running doubles and one side the queen is laying good, the other side the queen is not laying, you pull the queen out that's laying good, and then a swarm comes back in. The other queen, she's maybe just getting ready to lay, and all the bees can't fit in where you put your cell. And then they go migrate around, and then they kill that queen that's just about ready to lay. I found a single box, they'll just cluster on a big ball on the side until they all work their way in or migrate back to the parent hive.
Okay. That was going to be my second question, because you know, I'm just now really starting to trying to sell bees. I got my website going and everything. And I've got my boxes built and all for next year, but I'm now starting to build some more queen boxes. And my question was, I may not sell that many queens. So I was determined on what kind of queen boxes I need to build. Do I need to be building some that's got full deep frames to where they can stay in there longer? Or I know the little bitty mini ones, you got to get them out of there pretty quick.
Yeah, they're either, the trouble with the minis is it takes less resources, but you can turn the queens faster. Now, there's a lot of things that I teach out there, and sometimes some people look at it, well, you talked about doing this method today. Last week, you talked about a different method. Now, this is a situation just like that. So, all right, so you're saying that you don't get the queen out quick enough. Now, there's people that are not built up with numbers enough that they have to have a job. So they can only work their hives on weekends. And then if you have a day where, say, it's storming, you can't work it, there goes the second weekend. Now, that's where you can use a full-size medium, 6 1/4 frame, 19 inches long, full length, run 5 frames in there. And for some reason, they start filling it up too fast on a super good flow. Now you can set a super on top of it. And then when you have time to work it, now you got an extra 5, 6 frames. You can make 6 more splits. Keeps the bees from swarming.
Yeah. But see, like I said, I'm trying to get into selling queens. And like I said, I've got my website going. I've sold a few hives, not very many. And I'm hoping to sell queens. But what I'm saying, if I get queen boxes set up to a sale, you know, you need to have queens for sale or you ain't doing no good.
Right.
But I may not sell none right away. Like I said, if I got them little minis, they'll outgrow them before I might have a chance to sell them. So I was wondering if I need to be building some bigger queen boxes to where they could stay in there longer before I have to pull them out.
You could do that, or the next thing is called queen banking. You can either bank the queens or you can cage them. Learn to build, make your queen candy to where it's going to last. You can put queens.
That's something I've heard of too. Now, I don't know. That's another question to ask that you said that. How long can you bank a queen and her still function properly?
Well, have you ever seen people say that in February, I've got hundreds of queens I can sell you. They was caged in November or October the previous year.
Yeah, but are they still any good?
They sell them.
That don't mean they're any good.
Well, I mean, you know, today, you know, I had students over and we get talking about a lot of things. So we was talking about, you know, queens and, you know, how long to keep them and all that kind of stuff. So you can learn, when you're coming for one thing, you can learn a lot of other things on it. So, I mean, you can take and mix up queen candy if you learn to do it right. And you can put them on your table and keep them 2 weeks at least with no problem, providing you put a drop of water on the screen once every other day at least.
Yeah. Well, that's like I said, that's my question. I just didn't know about the banking thing because I've just been worried. I know I've heard you say you really didn't want to bank them over 2 or 3 weeks and all that before. And, you know, I may start selling them right off the bat and not have no problem. But then again, I may have to hang on to them for a while.
Well, the way things look, I think they're going to sell anything that looks like a bee. You're going to sell it fast this year because there's a lot of people all over the country has lost a lot of bees. California is #1 out there right now. They've lost so much between fire and landslides, and we've had storms knocking out other stuff, you know, so you're not going to have a problem selling bees.
Yeah. Well, like I said, ain't a lot of people know about my website because my website ain't been going but about 2.5 months now. And
these chats, they'll get your name out there. That's why it's a good idea to have your logo or something where you're having, you're getting advertising. When this thing goes out, you're getting thousands of views the first week.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm not in a location to do that at, but the name of my website is bees and queens farms. And like I said, I'm trying to get it going. I've got a lot of good bees and stuff. So, but like I said, I don't know about my queens because I'm afraid I can't move them as fast as I can raise them. But that was my
You
question.
don't think you can move queens as fast as you can raise them?
Well, I hadn't had a response on my website yet. That's what I'm getting at.
I ain't gonna put no words in anybody's mouth, but let David explain something to you. He's one of my students about selling queens.
Go ahead, David.
Okay.
Do you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I was talking to Don today about getting an extra jump. If you got queens ready to sell, I mean, this time of the year, you got that big build up in the spring, you can just drop them queens right in there, already mated. You're that much further ahead of the game, And yeah, I definitely, would say you could probably sell queens pretty fast because people might not be putting in right now, but they're kind of probably going to wait till, weather kind of stabilize, maybe March, and then bees are really building up. That's kind of what I was looking at this year myself is getting a bunch of queens from Don probably, or even queen sales, some ripe queen sales. If it may not be as fast, but you can really start a lot of splits like that because you've already got the queen sales instead of having to wait for your own bees, So yeah, I'd say it's a big market out there.
Well, I know, it's like everything else. People say there's a big market, but I ain't got a piece of it yet.
Well, like I said, most people are probably waiting. I'd say for the queens on that is, they're looking at, well, probably ain't nobody got any, and there's no sense of putting an order in because they think, well, I got to have that queen right now, and it's too cold for them to use it. Where really, I mean, if you got the queens and you can sell them, I mean, you could hold them, just make you a little old nuke out of them. You get ready to sell them. I mean, they're there. I mean, there's no question there. But like me, I would buy queens now or put an order in, but I'm kind of waiting for where my weather time is coming in.
Yeah, I ain't really got no queens for sale right now, but when I start producing them, I can mass produce them. I already was doing grafting and all that, and I'm having real good luck with all that.
Of course, another thing too, you got to look at people will wait on them. I mean, you can wait to get the orders, and then you say, okay, now I can start producing. I mean, you ain't got to have them ready for when they call.
Yeah.
My first year in, it was
I
really
live in
bad weather.
Mississippi. See, I live in Mississippi, and Easter's on the 4th this year, and you usually count Easter, all the cold weather gone.
Sure.
So I should be able to start grafting toward the end of February.
What part of Mississippi you in?
You know where Tupelo, Mississippi is at?
Sure do. I'm about 60 miles north of you, just across the border there in Tennessee.
I live actually in Pontotoc. That's right beside Tupelo.
Sure. Yeah, I know where it's at. Yeah, I live in Sandler, just north of Corinth, Mississippi, up there, straight up 45.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you ain't that far away then. But yeah, I'm trying to get started, and I've got several hives having actually pretty good luck, and like I said, my website's just been going about 2.5 months now.
Okay. What was that name of that website again?
It's Bees and Queens Farm, just a single farm. S on bees and S on queens, just single farm.
Okay, sure. Well, I mean, I got Don's stock, and that's what it might save me a whole long trip drive over here. I just drive out there and get them from you,
But like I said, I'm trying to get started and trying to sell some stuff. I don't know, how it's gonna work out. Everybody says you're selling it, but I ain't sold that many yet.
Well, there's at least 3 or 4 people on this chat right now you can talk to. Dennis is another fella. He thought he had enough boxes the first year, and he could tell you you're not gonna, if it looks like a bee, you'll sell it.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for a while, and I've never had more bees or queens that I could sell. I'm always way behind on everything.
Yeah. Well, right now I've got my shop slap full of boxes with frames in them, waiting for spring. Which I know, like I said, I'm nothing compared to what you are, but I think I've got a little over 1,000 frames in boxes in my shop. But that ain't nothing compared to what you do. But I've got probably about 150 boxes in there, I guess, something like that. And
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be worried about selling. I didn't want to sell last year, and I didn't advertise because, I'm trying to build my numbers up. But the sugar problem got me, and I made so many splits. I split up over 80 something times, and it's just word of mouth that really got me started because I had people that seen my acre area, and then they'd show up, and the next thing you know, well, there's a couple other guys come up, and then they say, well, hey, we heard you had bees, and 2 here and 4 there. I mean, it adds up pretty quick. So
yeah,
I wound up selling a bunch before I could really get my supplies up and my numbers up. But doing Don's method, I know I can get my numbers up pretty quick this spring. But like I said, I didn't even advertise. I didn't even mention to
well,
nobody. It just worked out that way.
yeah. Well, you know yourself, sugar's high.
Yeah. Well, it got really scarce around there. There in
Now,
June, July.
yeah. Well, now with the economy and the corona and everything else, everything has jumped sky high, and they're talking about everything jumping again in another month.
Yeah.
Because I build houses.
Matt,
and
are
I
you
hear-
one of my students from, have you come up here and took classes?
No, but I'm gonna try to this spring.
All right. I'm not pushing classes, but one thing you might think of, you want a booming business, paying $500, take classes, whether you come 1 time, 5 times, 10 times. And like I said at the beginning, I have students signed up 10, 15 years ago. They're welcome to come back, take a day here, take a day there. For $500 and the advertising you would get, guarantee you'd be asking for a break because people are searching for the bees. And
Yeah.
I don't like to sit here and just toot my own horn. I got students out there who'll tell you that is the truth there. You're going to get a business if that's what you really want to do. Now, I wish I could sell just, 3 or 4 queens here, 3 or 4 here. What's killing me is orders with 100 here, 500 there, 1,000 there. Those are the ones that kill you because you're only making one customer happy rather than 40 or 50 customers, 3 or 4 queens there, because that gives you more word of mouth.
Yeah. Well, see, that's one thing I'm worried about because I don't have that many queen boxes. And I would like to be where I can fill orders of 100 and no more queen boxes than I got now. If I furnishing myself and 1 or 2 here, there, and yonder, if somebody orders 100, I'm gonna have problems.
Well, the thing you can do, and I'm not pushing that, is you can buy ripe queen cells. You drop them in a box, a mini nuke or a 5 frame, whatever you want to put them in 1 frame of bees. You got a queen out, and she's going to be laying, within 7 to 10 days. Those are ripe queen cells. Now, if you put a mated queen in there, usually 3 or 4 days, that queen comes out and you're already building brood. Or, you can cut cells or little make cells, which ties up anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So you can buy any kind of material, any amount of bees. You cannot buy time. So by buying a bunch of mated queens, you are actually pushing your clock ahead about 2 months.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Lots of ways to look at it. Get your numbers up, believe me, because once you start selling, the hardest thing I can teach you is how to say no to a customer that's standing there, money in their hand.
Well, I've got several bees now, and I have no doubt of being able to build numbers. The main problem is having boxes. Last year, I had a lot of trouble about getting frames. That messed me up. And, frames got scarce. And then it got hot on me, and I had a few issues because of the hot weather. But I think I got them worked out now. But I've got plenty of frames. Which ain't many, but I got 4 or 5 boxes of frames sitting in the shop now.
How many is a definition of a lot of frames?
Well, to you, probably what I got's nothing, but I probably got 15 or
No.
1600.
It's not that. You said you want to sell. Now, if you get 25 people come there and buy 5 nukes each, you're already exhausted. Now you don't have time to put new ones together or even build them. So you want to start selling, you have to have enough inventory on backup because you won't have the time to do it.
Well, I understand that because I build houses for a living. You know, I work 10 hours a day. I even cut grass and I'm doing this. And believe it or not, I've got plenty of time to do it all. I'm a type of person, I work all the time. So
There's some people that do that, you know, if you enjoy what you're doing, you know, you make money at it. That's one thing I preach.
And the bee thing, I've enjoyed that more than anything I've ever done.
Well, to me, to worry about having a product you can't sell, I wouldn't even give it a second thought.
But like I said, this year my goal is to at least break even.
Break even?
Well, I said that's my goal.
Year you should make money.
Well, I'm hoping to do that.
Well,
But
I mean, those classes, there's more than just teaching you bees. I mean, I'm teaching you how to find resources and how to manage stuff. I mean, there's a lot of little things. Greg is a good person to talk to on that thing. He was keeping bees. He was a beekeeper before he come here. But he'll tell you, he's completely had to, you know, ignore a lot of things and do things more efficiently. You know?
Yeah. Like that,
tell him what you had learned, the most important thing coming down the first year.
Go ahead, Greg.
There's so many, but I think the one that I'm currently stuck on is learning to say no, because once you get the word out there that you've got good bees and you do a good job, you know, it's a great problem to have, but everyone sells your bees for you. Everyone who's been following Don or has been following Don along will hear all of us speak highly of his mentorship and also the quality of his bees. It's not because we get some great discount or a pat on the back doing it, but it's the truth. And once you do the same in your yard, folks will do the same thing for you. And then next thing you know, you can't. There's not enough supply for that demand. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from Don is, you know, one that I struggle with still, and you got to learn to say no. And Matt, you're talking about having problems with selling queens and all these things. I think one of the big buffers that a lot of us overlook when we're starting down that path of being successful is we don't have enough bees. And so we're almost starting back from square one, it feels like, every single year to build up to have enough bees. So if you really are worried about not selling your bees, try to keep in that mentality and get those resource hives going, get you plenty of hives to pull from, and then you're not going to stress out when you do get the orders in. But like Don said, if you have 25 people show up and they all want 5 nukes each, you don't have the stock to do it. You're going to be running yourself pretty ragged. But I think what Don is probably referring to, one of the greatest lessons that I ever learned from Don is it was almost right away from him. Everyone says they can't do this, they can't do that, they're going to have problems with that, but there's only 3 people that are going to run you out of business in the bee yard. That's wouldn't, couldn't, and can't. And we've all heard Don say it, and it's the God's honest truth. That's you're the only thing in between there. Don will teach you how to raise the bees. The people will become looking for good bees. It's a matter of you getting in a good mental space to do it, and also be smarter than most of us, and learn how to say no and build those resources up so you actually have something to work with. Otherwise, you'll be in a rough spot. A lot of us are trying to work out of that. So wouldn't, couldn't, can't. That's the biggest thing I learned very early on from Don.
Well, I understand that. I know about where I want to sit at, and I will say no when I get down to that spot. And I'm just, it's how everybody, when you first starting to actually sell a product, you want to sell, And when it starts selling, I won't be worried about it. And I've sold a few, but it ain't, the orders ain't coming in like I want them to. You know how it is when you first getting started. And when it does start, I may start getting way too many and get upset that I can't fill them. You know.
I've never run across that problem. I think
But,
one thing you have to do is you got to have faith in what your ability is to do. And, you know, from that point, you're going to be successful. I mean, you got the knowledge there. You're either going to spend money taking classes, get on my webpage, or do a lot of advertising, money out of pocket. This, what you're on right now, is the greatest resource that you can get. You got an investment of $5 or $10 here. You can get on my webpage, go down the line. There's a list of all my keepers. And I would almost guarantee it. There's not one keeper on there that would not say, let me help you do this. Let me explain this to you. They'll give you that helping hand. So,
Yeah.
you know, you don't have to spend all that big bucks out there.
Okay,
Well, I
we've
know
got-
one.
we've got a lot of other questions, so we're going to move on to a few others people before we run out of time. Okay, Matt?
That's good.
Okay. Next up was David and Tracy, I believe. Go ahead.
Hey, good evening, Don. How are you doing?
Oh, good, good.
Good. So David and Tracy with Hepa White Farms. We're in West Houston, and we're selling bees in Queens, and you can get us on hepawhitefarms.com. So I was just going to put a plug in for the classes as well. We're going to go back and see you in March, where we did the commercial class last year. It's just worth more than its weight in gold. You'll get a lot of tips that you never thought you'd get. It's just like Don was saying, you may come for one reason. You'll leave with the question to that, answer to that question, and then you'll leave with 100 other answers you didn't expect. It's so valuable, and it's hands-on, and you work, and it's worth it. So please be encouraged to get with Don, because the classes are so well worth it. Hey, I wanted to ask a question about pollen substitute.
Mhm.
We've typically started in the middle of January and started feeding with just a quarter bar, if you will, of pollen substitute till it's gone, and then pollen patties, and then also started with the high fructose corn syrup this time of year too. But I've got migratory lids, and I've converted all the ones I had last year to migratory. We really like them.
Yeah.
I don't know where to put the pollen patty to start feeding, because there's not much space in the top of the lid to the top
If
of
you
the
make
frames.
your boxes according to the way I make them, you should have your rabbit for your frame rest 3/4. That's going to give you 3/8 above the frame, no matter what kind of lid you use. That's more
Okay.
than enough for bees to get to it.
Okay.
And say you're using a quarter of a patty. Right now, I wouldn't use no more than 1/8 if they're a standard 1 pound patty. Cut them up into eighths. February 1st, you probably could go to a quarter or even a half, depending on what your number of frames are covered with bees.
Okay.
You don't want to go too much with the pollen substitute in January, because if you get a cold spell, they've expanded out so fast that there won't be enough bees to cover that brood, and they'll cluster tight, and you'll lose a 2-inch ring around the cluster. So that would be my main advice right there. Go easy on it. You don't want to overstimulate. Walk your
Okay.
yard. You should have stuff blooming right now. I've got dandelions, and like I said, henbed is starting to open up, and there's a few other things out there that's blooming right now.
Yeah, we're getting such.
Red maples will be coming in.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, we're getting lots of nice days here, and there's certainly things blooming. They're bringing back pollen, and it's just a slow wake up period. But you're right. There's cold nights, and so I don't want to get ahead of it too much.
Yeah.
A separate question, real quick, on when you're ready to sell queens, how long do you leave her laying on a minimum before you sell her?
It goes back to how you feel about it. It's supply and demand. I personally, I can look at a pattern and I can tell if she's laying good. On a mini nuke, if you get a 5-inch pattern in a mini nuke on one frame, that's good to go. If you're running 5-frame deeps, standard 19 inches long, I'd say 2 frames of bees. You feel yeah, you got a good queen, sell it. But as a general rule, most commercial bee people, if they see an egg, it's ready. Because all they're doing is they're selling you a laying queen. Now, there's a fine line of what you're asking is a laying queen or a tested queen. A tested queen would be a frame or frame and a half. That's what I consider tested. But if you got eggs, you know, queen's mated.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think we'd want to sell too early because we, you know, for reputation, we want some queen that will last and really do well for the customer. And our bees that we sold last year, they're just getting rave reviews, and we're getting repeat customers this year. And they just love the productivity and the gentleness, both of those things.
Well, the main thing I try to teach students that come here is to look at the nuke, and I probably told you the same thing before we even opened the box. If you see something that you don't like, if you don't want it for the color of the queen, the laying pattern, the frame condition, we get you another box. So I try to teach my students to look at it and think to yourself, if you don't want to buy that and buy it as it sits, why sell it to someone? That's the way I try to teach.
Yep.
That always has worked for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Don.
Okay.
Okay, over to Dennis. Go ahead, Dennis. Dennis, got on mute.
All right, Don, I'll try to be quick. What's your southern yard? What's the closest town to it?
It's Washington.
I'd like to come down early and get some sales.
Okay.
Matt?
Let us know about at least a week in advance, because a lot of times on those ripe cells, we have other commercial people that are just getting started, and sometimes they'll buy 100, 200 of them at a shot. And if we only got 1,500 set in the incubator for coming off that particular day, then you'd have to wait 2 to 3 days for the next batch coming off.
I'll let you know 30 days ahead of time, probably, just to be safe. Matt, I advertised on Craigslist, and that kept me busy right off the bat. And I put my extra queens when I got thinking worried about them. I just put them on a frame and a nuke and just figured, well, I'll just build up my nukes. And I sold them when they come in. Also, Don, I want to have about 100 of them little mini nukes this year.
Okay.
At the end of the year, do you shake all them off into a box or mix them up into weaker highs? What do you do with them?
You talking about the mini frames that are drawn out?
Yes.
The best thing and the smartest thing to do is get some supers, or to make some supers, put a divider bar in it. And then if you're running 8-frame stuff, you could put 16 frames over the top of a hive going into winter and use that as your storage part for your honey. That way, as soon as you pull that off, when you're getting ready to set up, you're setting up 16 right off the bat, 16 minis. You just drop a frame in with a starter strip or a piece of foundation. You got 2 frames in that mini, and you're up and running so much faster.
Okay, that's everything. All right, thank you.
Okay, over to Jay. Go ahead, Jay.
Hey, Don. On the pollen substitute, is it better to run the pollen patties, or what about the dry pollen? What's the pros and cons with it?
Well, in January and February, the problem with the dry pollen, if you put it inside of a hive, they'll fan it out. It blows out too much. If you put it in a remote feeder, like you can just get some PVC or take a plastic water jug, cut a hole in the side and hang it in a tree so that squirrels can't get in it, and let them go find it and bring it back. That works to a point, but I like to mix up honey with mine. It gives them a boost, and put a little bit of mineral in there with it, you know. When it comes to pollen patties, there's a lot of different varieties and a lot of opinions. So that's just what it's like sugar. If you can mix up the sugar into a patty, they seem to take it a lot better than just dumping dry sugar in there. But I have done both because of time. How long does it take to mix it up? How long does it take to open it? Set the mixed sugar on a candy board. Whether you're running several hundred hives, you can open a lid as fast as you can walk and dump a cup in each one in the back, and that's going to give you an emergency, situation for a while. It all depends on how big your operation is and how much time you got on that yard.
Well, it gets kind of tight right now, but I'm getting it ready, so I'll be full time at it in a couple of years. So I'm just trying to figure out what's best to do with as far as the pollen, feeding it versus not feeding it versus drier
Well,
patties.
see, a lot of that is going to be by area and location too. And then what works for me here, I could have a beekeeper 5 miles from here doing the exact same thing and get a different results. So,
I've always had quite a bit of pollen in the hive without adding substitutes.
if you got pollen that's stored in the hive, then I wouldn't worry about adding a pollen substitute. I might mix up some sugar and honey together and make it like a fondant, and just, even if it's loose, lay it across the top. You can also use a piece of wax paper and get you a half a cup of that mix like that, with sugar and honey mix, old honey from last year, and that gives them a quick start.
Well, I was putting dry sugar on today. It got up to about 50, but it was freezing this morning. So, all right, I'll let some others go. I know there's quite a few on the talk.
Okay. And over to Billy. Go ahead, Billy.
Hey, Don, I got another question on those mini nukes. When you pull that queen out of that mini nuke after she's mated, how long do you need to wait before you put another queen cell in there?
How long do we take, or how long do you take, or how long should they take?
No, how long do you wait before you put another queen cell into that mini nuke after
We
you pull
put-
a mated queen?
We put several hundred queen cages in a box, and as we go through that bee yard, as we open that box, we're pulling the queen, adding a cell back at the same time.
Okay, so there's no wait. So even if with the eggs and all that in there, it doesn't matter.
Why would it matter?
Well,
Am I missing something?
I'm probably missing something.
Well, we're not taking a cut cell, we're taking a grafted cell. We
Right.
know exactly it's going to come out in less than 24 to 36 hours. So if you're thinking, well, if you wait a little bit, they're going to make their own queen cells.
Yeah.
That never happens. Very rarely, unless you damage the cell when you put it in.
Okay. That was it. Thanks.
Some people, they have that belief that they should wait 24 hours. There's a lot of things that are spoken of out there, but the bottom line is to take those people and ask them, do they make a living at it, or are they just running a few hives? When you run it as a business, it has to go like clockwork.
Okay.
Okay, over to Melissa. Go ahead, Melissa.
Hey, everybody. I'll be selling Don's bees in the spring. I'm taking a route from my place in the Chicagoland area down to Bees to pick up packages in Queens. So if anybody wants to place their orders, you could go to my website, gsbeez.com. Thank you.
That's all you got to say tonight. Here, I thought you were going to stump me tonight.
I tried getting you earlier on the advertising.
All right, over to Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
Well, Don, I don't think any of us can stump you, but I've got a question for you.
Okay.
What is Lake Sinai virus, and what does it actually do to the honeybees?
I haven't heard of that one. I've heard of the Israeli virus. I've heard of it. There's these professors come up with some word names that come up with some weird terms. I'm just an old country, backyard beekeeper like, and self-taught. So I know about putting bees in a box and raising bees. I'm not good on all the technical stuff. That might be a good thing to stump me on, technical stuff.
Well, I was down at a beekeeping conference in Tennessee, and a fellow, I think he's west of Georgia, who does real well. He lost an awful lot of hives out of the blue and couldn't figure out what in the world is going on. And so he did send some bees out to Beltsville. And the only thing that they could come up with there is that they said it had the bees had Lake Sinai virus, which was, I guess, extremely rare, and they're having a hard time figuring out exactly what the symptoms are, what the cause is. But their best guess, like with anything else, is that it is a virus that they think is transmitted by varroa mite. However, where this gets a little bit tricky is we're talking about exposure from very, very, very little exposure from the varroa mites. When we're talking about 0 to 1% alcohol washes, very, very low to no mites in the hive, treating preventatively, treating with formic to where you're going in and blasting everything out. And then to have a lot of almost put you in mind of a really severe colony collapse disorder again, but with something that might be called Lake Sinai.
I'm
I
glad you
guess
brought up
it goes by
that.
LSV, I think, for short.
You brought up that colony collapse disorder. There's a lot of people over the last, say 5-10 years come up and ask me about this. And have you ever asked your same thought on that is how many commercial beekeepers colony collapse? To me, I think what it amounts to is the beekeeper negligence. It's usually the beekeeper has caused this problem and they're looking for something. And the people that are real smart, go to college and have all these fancy names, if they can't figure it out, they come up with some kind of answer, put a fancy name on it. It's usually beekeeper error or lack of treating or something related to the beekeeper. Because we run lots of hives, and to run 2-3% losses is that's bad. I can accept up to 5% at a learning yard, like at my house here, because I expect a student to come, kill queens, make mistakes, and damage queens, that kind of stuff. But for me to say, I lost 50% of my hives from this unknown disease that they come up with, it doesn't make sense to me. And that's what I started my YouTube channel. Common sense beekeeping. If it don't make sense, think about it, And I might be wrong on those thinkings, but I work with a lot of other commercial beekeepers. They could not stay in business at a 50%, a 30% loss even. They'd be out of business.
Yep, that's the truth. Hopefully we're not in one of those weird phases where, the common sense beekeeping approach, I think makes, it makes sense, no pun intended, but had it not been for some of those approaches early on with trach mites and some other things, it might have been really challenging for a lot of folks. But I think sometimes maybe these things do pop up, and hopefully there's a common sense approach if indeed it does pan out to be something that's a little bit of a wild card. Hopefully it's not, but if folks start seeing really, heavy losses after successfully keeping bees for decades, to me, I don't know, it's just something to keep an eye on, I guess.
What you were asking about before, this new virus they got, it was brought up probably 2 or 3 years ago where a beekeeper had lost a large amount of hives. It turned out that it was his own fault. He had a farm. He had some corn that was in a barrel that didn't notice it got wet. It fermented, then got mold on it, and the bees was feeding off of it. So a lot of times you got to look at what you're doing. I have a student that lost over half of his hives, and he said he had absolute no mites. He didn't want to melt the wax down, and he brought it to me. So I happened to look at it with a magnifying glass, because I wear glasses, I use the magnifying. I could actually see mites crawling around in the cells, and he swore he tested them for mites and didn't see none. So what one person says, you can't always go on what they're telling you. Because I had many people tell me, I didn't see a mite, but my hive's dead. It's all gone. Do your research. I think the best thing to do, if you're not sure, send a sample off to Beltsville. Get a student or get another beekeeper who's got a few years under him and actually do a alcohol wash. And I say that with an experienced beekeeper, because if you're fairly new and you brush a bunch of bees into a jar, like they said to use a jar, get about 300 bees. I've seen people brush a queen in there and couldn't spot the difference. So that's why I always say, get somebody that has a little experience to help you. People are willing to help. All you have to do is ask. No one knows all the answers. I don't know all the answers. I know what works, what don't work, what I've made a lot of mistakes on. and I'm here to help you not make the same mistakes.
That's good advice.
Okay, and last question of the night from Dennis. Go ahead, Dennis.
No question, Don. I just keep forgetting this is a worldwide web. It's Crutchfield Family Bee Farms, North Central Missouri. I better get a plug in.
Better.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Better late than never.
Yeah.
All right, then that'll do it for tonight. We'll see everyone on the 30th. So thank you, Don. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, and thank everybody for showing up. And I'll stick around for a little bit, and you can ask me those questions that you was too bashful to ask. Because now that we're not recording,